Okay, let's go ahead and go into the next section. So this time I'm going to show you how to get there. So once you log into the system, you're going to be sent to your dashboard. You should see the calendar of the day. You'll go back to the section that you missed. You'll notice the day on there. When we actually did that particular event, you'll have to go looking for it. So here is section 1.3. You can tell by the checks the day that we actually did the um, uh, presentation. So you can look at the checks because those were due on those days. And you can see under lesson materials the one that you have to get to. You'll click on that. You won't see the change date or remove. You'll just see the view. You'll click on view. And then you'll go to launch presentation. So you go to launch presentation. Um, if you click it down, it'll go right into your Chrome. So you'll see some things that you have to get through. So extrema, max min, relative max min, relative min. I'm going to use a little different terminology than they use. And then we have this end behavior. I'm going to make this a little bit different as well. So extrema, if you'll notice, are just points of relative highs and lows, which are the relatives mins and maxes. So we're going to go through those as we kind of get through this next piece here. So in this case now, we have our extrema. Sorry. So that is, if we look at a function, our extrema would be this relative max and this relative min. Now they all are kind of go together. So relative max and relative min. Now, what that means is that relative to a domain like right between these 2 points, that would be my maximum, and relative to about these 2 points. And it doesn't really matter which 2 points you pick as long as you're looking at relative values. So that would be my relative min. Now, we have our absolute max and min. I'm going to use that term. So we have our absolute max, which in this case the book just calls max. And we have our absolute min, which the book just calls the minimum. So if I have a function that's doing something like this one's going all the way down to negative infinity, and this one's going all the way up to positive infinity. So my overall or absolute maximum would be positive infinity. My overall or absolute minimum would be negative infinity. So this deals with the y values, of course, when we're looking at absolute max and absolute min. But my relative max and relative min just means, are there any changing points in the function where we have a peak and a valley? So this peak would be a relative min, a relative max, and this valley would be a relative min. And we could have multiple ones of those. So we could have functions, that look something like this, and does something kind of similar to that. So, of course, my absolute min would be negative infinity. My absolute max would be positive infinity. And here we have a relative max, a relative max, a relative max, a relative min, a relative min, and a relative min. So we can see all that when we're looking at maxes and mins. So that basically explains all of these except for the end behavior. So the last one is the end behavior. The end behavior just says at the beginning, what's it doing? It's going to negative infinity. At the end, it is going to positive infinity. So my end behavior tells me, and that's why I don't like it called end behavior, but my beginning behavior is negative infinity, and my end behavior is positive infinity. Those are my end behaviors. So that's what we take a look at for those. So this is a few examples that I can give you here. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So learning about these extremas, which again are really just those minimum and maximum values that we're looking at here. Notice here that we can have higher low points. So my maximum or min values are called extrema. So here is an extrema. And then, of course, these both go up to positive infinity. So my max value would be all the way up there. Here is my relative min max and my relative min. Here is my absolute max and my absolute min. My absolute min, well, actually I have two absolute mins that both go to negative infinity. Relative max, relative min, relative max. Okay, and that's what we're looking at those. So when they ask us these different ones, when we look at the extrema, which is the highest point, well, that's really my absolute max and absolute min, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because notice if I do my maximum, it's going to be that value, and my min is that value. So my relative max, you'll see what those are. You'll see what your relative min are in those cases as well. Okay, so that's what you want to understand. I'm not going to use the word extrema on a test. I'm going to ask you for absolute max, absolute min, relative max, relative min. That's all I care about. Okay. Oops, I don't want the previous resource. Next resource. So finding them from graphs. First one is okay, they want to know what my absolute value is. Notice that my absolute value goes all the way up to infinity. So out of all these values, that would be my very, very, very highest point. Okay, my minimum value, my absolute minimum would be this value here. That's my lowest point. My relative max would be this one and this one here. And my relative min would be this value and this value, because that one's my absolute value there. So we'll just take a look at the answers. Okay, there is none, right? Maximum, even though we call it infinity, because it is going all the way up to infinity, so I don't agree with that answer. And they change it later on too, so I want to make sure that you understand how that works. So absolute maximum should be infinity. Absolute minimum, of course, is that one low point, and then we can see a couple of relative max and relative min values. Okay, finding and interpreting extrema. Okay, so notice here, we can see here now these don't carry on forever. So hours since midnight over a 24-hour period. So these are endpoints. So the function does not keep going. We don't have those arrows there. So it doesn't just keep going down. It's going to turn around and come back up. So we want to look at the different values. Here is my very lowest point at 4 hours. So that's my lowest point at 4 hours. My highest point, very highest point, which is my maximum, is going to be all the way up here at 11 point something. That would be at 12 hours, 11.5. And then we have a relative min and a relative max there. In some books and in some cases, this could also be considered a relative min because it's heading down towards a low point. And sometimes this can be considered a relative max. So depends on the area that we're looking at here. Don't normally call those that, and I'm not going to try to confuse you on that kind of stuff, but at least you can see here overall max, overall min, overall max, relative min, relative max. Okay, so it kind of gives me some points as we go through it. It's just going to tell me where they all are and relative min. So that's it. Okay. Here we are on a check. This one does have a check that you have to do. So if you haven't done it yet, you need to go and do that now and then go to the next video.